Hello, everybody. My name is Tim Smith, and I'm with Early Care and Education. We are here to talk about the 10 principles of discipline. Such a powerful training. I think you're really going to enjoy this. Now, there's a couple of ground rules that I want to put in place before we start this DVD training. We're going to go over a lot of material today that's really going to, ask you to stop and think outside of the box. So as you go through this material, pause your DVD, have conversations with your coworkers, and really talk about this material. Now, it's important that you have an open mind as you discuss this information. Let me give you a little bit of background of where this came from. A lot of the information today was written by Dr. Becky Bailey, and some of you may be familiar with conscious discipline and love and logic. Now, whenever I was first introduced to conscious discipline and I started doing studies on it, I started reading the material and I started getting very frustrated. I started getting very frustrated and even a little angry that everything that Dr. Bailey had talked about in her conscious discipline basically was saying that the way my parents raised me growing up, that I had horrible parents and everything that they did was wrong. And like I said, I got very offended by that. And, because I felt that I had really good parents growing up. I thought they did a nice job with all of us. Were they perfect? No, but no parents perfect. But, I loved my mom and dad. But then I started realizing that the way our parents raised us, when we were children, is a lot different than how children are being raised today. What we were exposed to is different. When we were growing up, we went outside, we played. We weren't exposed to screen time, where these days, children don't go outside. They're overexposed to screen time. The whole time I was growing up, my mom never worked. We always stayed at home with mom after school during the summertime. Mom was always there. Where again, these days, over 70% of the children in the state of Texas are in some type of group care situation. And over 70% of the children in group care situations spend more of their waking hours with us than they do their actual parents. So, the environment is totally different. The family structures are different. There's just so many things that we've got to look at. So, obviously, the way our parents raised us back then is not the same way that children are being raised today. So keep that in mind as we go through this material, and we'll talk a lot about this, and we'll talk a lot about some of the differences as we move forward. Now, the first thing I've got up here is that if you think you're too small to make an impact, go to bed with a mosquito. All right. Obviously, anyone can make a strong impact. The simple fact that you're watching this DVD, you're making an impact right there. And, and every day that we work in our early education programs, we are making an impact. And we have become some of the most important people in the children's lives. So always keep that in mind right there. The first rule in life is to just show up. Well, congratulations. You've done it. You're here. All right, you're watching this DVD, you're learning this new material, you're excited to get into your early education classroom and make that difference. You have met the first rule of life. You're here. Now, stop for a minute, and if y'all want to pause the DVD, please do so, but have a little conversation about when you were a child and you misbehaved or you did not meet your parents' expectations, you did something wrong, however you want to define it, and how did your parents handle that situation? So again, if you want to pause for just a moment, have that conversation. All right, now, hopefully you had this conversation about how your parents handled situations when you were a child. A lot of the common things I hear is I got a whooping. You know, sometimes my mom didn't have to give us a whooping. All she had to do was look at us and give us the eye. You know, sometimes when we acted out in church, she would pinch you right there on the side. And I don't know if y'all had the same type of mama that I had, but there was something about moms that she could pinch you right there on the side. And it was just the worst thing in the world. And my mom was not only a pincher, but she was a twister too. She would pinch you on the side and just twist. And oh, you learned your lesson real quick. You know, how many of y'all might have said that when you were growing up and you got in trouble, your parents made you go get a limb off of the tree and you got a whooping by the limb? You know, and how many of you thought you were smart and you would find the smallest little stick out there? Yeah, that never worked out well, did it? I always tried to find the heaviest, largest log I could carry because I knew Mama couldn't swing that thing. You know, you know, I've had a lot of people tell me they had to sit in the corner and they had to stare in the corner. You know, they got a whooping by a belt. You know, I grew up in the country, so you know, Dad's belt always had engravings on it. Ooh, that hurt. That stung so bad right there. But you know, nowadays, you know, if your parents discipline you or punish you the way we were punished, you know, I used to tell my mom all the time that if she was raising us children now the way she raised us back then, all four of us would be in foster care and both mom and dad would be in prison. It's just a different world, completely different world. But let's talk for a moment about the difference between discipline and punishment. All right. Now, I want you to keep in mind that discipline comes from the word disciple. And disciple is to teach, it's to mentor, it's to follow, it's to grow. So when we refer to discipline, discipline has that intent to teach. All right, where punishment has an intent to make someone feel bad, to make someone hurt. All right, so there's a big difference between the two. Discipline is very consistent. All right, and we want to use a consistent discipline. Children need routine, they need structure, especially with the group care setting that we have these days and the stimulating environment that we have these days. Children need that consistency. Where, again, going back to whenever I was growing up, you know, punishment was very inconsistent. I never knew from one moment to the next how mom was going to handle a situation. You know, me and my brothers might get into a fight one day and we would all get a whooping and mom would just come unglued. The very next day we can get in the exact same fight and I could hit my brother and she'd just look right at me and say, well, he probably deserved it. So, you know, you never knew how they were going to handle different situations. You know, discipline is based on love. Discipline is based on nurturing. It's based on growth. Where punishment, it's just like when I talked about my mom used to just give me that evil eye. All she had to do was look at me, and I knew that I was in trouble. And that was based on fear. I want to talk about this one for just a moment because yes, my mom would give us that eye, or we knew that we would get, you know, a spanking or a whooping if we got in trouble. And so it was based on fear, but it was a respectful fear. All right, we still loved her. She still loved us. There was trust and respect that was built into that. Where you've got to look at it a little bit differently, you know, because nowadays fear can be taken in a completely different manner. All right, so you got to look at the fear part of it that's there. You know, discipline is focused on cooperation and teaching cooperation. Punishment is focused on bribes, intimidations, and threats. There's a lot of techniques that are out there in the education world that use a system of bribes, intimidations, and threats. And I want you to kind of distinguish that and look at how discipline and punishment are different from each other. Behavioral charts, for example, having all of the kids start on green. And then as they go throughout the day, when they use poor judgment, when they don't meet the teacher's expectations, when they have what is defined as a negative behavior, they move their little color from green to yellow or from yellow to blue and then blue to red. That type of behavioral chart. Well, let's look at the screen right here. Are those behavioral charts, are they discipline or are they punishment? Well, it's pretty clear. It's bribes, intimidations, and threats. All right? I'm going to intimidate you to get you to stay on green. I'm going to threaten you. If you misbehave, you're going to have to move your color up. And then, of course, we hear the classic, everyone that stays on green today gets a piece of candy. That's a bribe. All right? Now, this type of behavioral chart is age appropriate in an elementary school for first graders through fifth graders. In an early childhood environment, when we're working with 0 through 5-year-olds, their maturity level is not there yet. All right, they don't understand this type of system, and it can actually backfire on you and cause more damages than it is productive. And plus, any of y'all that have had children that go to school and they use this type of behavioral chart, when the kid comes home from school, what's the first thing they tell you? They tell you what color everybody else is on. They don't tell you what color they were on. They come home, oh, Mom, guess what? Johnny went to red today. Johnny goes to red every single day, Mom. Oh, Susie went to yellow today. They love to inform you what other children have done. That right there is teaching the child to stereotype. It's teaching the child to judge, all right? And yes, Johnny may go to red every single day, but what the child and the parent and maybe even the teacher doesn't understand is that, yeah, Johnny goes to red every single day because his parents are not feeding him breakfast in the morning, and he's hungry, and he gets cranky when he's hungry because he has that unmet need. Or Johnny could have an undiagnosed special need that is creating a malfunction in his little body and causing him to act out, and that needs to be diagnosed and treated appropriately. That's why he's going to red every single day. So there's a big misunderstanding right there. Discipline will set clear expectations, what the child needs to do, and we want to focus on the desired expectations rather than what's wrong. And that's one big thing as we go through this presentation today. I want y'all to focus on the desired behavior rather than the negative behavior. Discipline demonstrates a positive behavior. You're going to see one of the 10 principles is that adults accept themselves as role models. That's demonstrating that positive behavior. Where I bet a lot of y'all can remember when we were children growing up, there were so many situations that our parents just expected us to know how to act. Well, you cannot expect a child to just know how to act. We've got to demonstrate that. We have to role model that. One more quick little list right here. Discipline practices positive behavior, again, where punishment expects the child just to get it right. We're going to focus on solutions rather than blame. And we're going to learn that our brain is automatically wired to be blamers, all right? Because children are born to be egocentric, we are born thinking that the world revolves around us. And because of that, we instantly go to blame. Where what we've got to do with our children these days is we've got to focus on solutions, all right? Yes, someone made a mistake, but this is how we're going to fix it, and we're going to work together to fix it. We want our interactions to be helpful rather than hurtful, and we want to focus on what to do rather than what the child didn't do. And we want a cooperative environment rather than a competitive environment. We want everyone to win rather than someone always losing. All right. Whoops, sorry. All right, let's move on to our next slide. Positive discipline is a process. It's not an event. This is not a one-time thing. All right, this is a lifestyle right here. It's like going to the gym. All right, you cannot go to the gym one time and instantly be a hottie. All right, you've got to go to the gym over and over and over again. It took you a long time to get out of shape. It's going to take you a long time to get in shape. All right. So positive discipline is something that we live, it's something that we breathe, but it is so extremely successful, not only for the child, but for the teacher and everyone part of it. All right, here we go. We're going to get to the good stuff now. Positive principle number one, you must know your child. And you must understand that every single child is different. There's no cookie cutter approach to this. Their experiences are different. Their temperament is different. Their personalities are different. Their stage of development is different. So that's where positive principle number one comes in, is you must know your child. Using assessment, using milestones to determine where they're at. I also want you to keep in mind that there are 4 different frustration temperaments that we are going to see with children. Everyone focus on this particular slide. This is so important right here. And I want you to think, we got 4 different frustration temperaments, and I want you to think about the children that are in your classroom right now. You got the first kid, and let's say, for example, we put some puzzle pieces on a table, and we ask the child to go up to the puzzle and put it together. Well, the first kid walks up, and he tries to put the puzzle together. He moves the pieces around, okay? He may look down at it, take a deep breath, exhale, and then just shake his head and move on to the next activity. That's your sire, all right? And then let's say we got the kid that goes over to the table, tries to put the puzzle together, moves the pieces around, and then he starts whining. Oh, teacher, why did you give me this? It's so hard. Oh. And that's the crier. That's the one that whines, he gives up, he blames, why me, poor me, I'm pathetic. And that's your crier. How many of y'all have this kid in your classroom? Exactly. Then you have the kid that goes over to the puzzle piece, and he tries to put the puzzle together, and he moves the pieces around, and then suddenly he flies off in a rage, and anger comes just flowing out of his body, and all the puzzle pieces go flying across the room. The table gets flipped over. The chair flies backwards. And instant aggression. That's the kid, that's the flyer. Flies off in a rage whenever he can't do the task. And then you've got your trier. The kid that comes over to the puzzle pieces. And he tries to put the puzzle together. He moves the pieces around. He separates the pieces back out, tries it from a different angle, and he continues to work on the puzzle piece until he gets it. And he puts the puzzle together. That's your trier. So think about the children in your classroom right now. Who are your sires? Who are your triers, your criers, and your flyers? All right. Now, I want you to pause the DVD for a moment and have a conversation with those around you. Out of the 4 frustration temperaments, which child should you be most concerned about? Okay, so I asked you to pause the DVD and have a conversation about the 4 frustration temperaments. Which child are you most concerned about? The sire, the trier, the crier, or the flyer? Many of you may have said the flyer or the crier really concerns me. But in reality, the child that you should be most concerned about here is the sire. The sire is the one that is the wallflower. He goes unnoticed. All right. The flyer and the crier, even though they may be annoying, they may be frustrating, at least they are expressing themselves. And they are expressing themselves in a way that we can work with the child, we can work with the family, and we can come up with solutions. The sire is giving you nothing to work on. And in fact, the sire often gets labeled falsely. Oh, he's such a good kid. He's such a quiet kid. He never causes any problems. I just love the sire. But he still has the same aggression. He still has the same doubt in his mind that the crier and the flyer have. He's just not expressing himself. And it's like a volcano that is going to continue to rumble and rumble and rumble. And what happens with the volcano? It eventually explodes. And I want y'all to think about, today's world that we live in. And every time you turn on the TV, you hear about a mass shooting or an explosion or a bomber, some individual that has caused an act of violence and they've hurt or killed other people. And oh, so often when you hear about these situations, when they interview the family and the friends of the aggressor, you always hear one thing, very common. He was always so quiet growing up. He was always so easygoing growing up. Well, you see what happened. He was a sire. He kept it all together. He kept it inside, and eventually it came out. And it came out in an extremely aggressive and violent way. So as you're working with your children and you see these 4 frustration temperaments, don't ignore any of them. Work with the children. Understand how each individual child operates differently and get them to express themselves, but don't falsely label the child either. All right. Positive principle number 2 is that you know what is normal. All right. Know what is normal. So we're going to go over a few typical things that the normal average child will do. You're going to see this in all of our early education programs out there. All right. So this is typical number 1. Children turn fear into a game. Children have this innate ability to get their caregivers to feel what they're feeling. All right, that's how they get their needs met. So when we talk about an infant, a baby, when they have an unmet need, they're hungry, they're tired, they're dirty, they're uncomfortable, the child cries. And when the child cries, it triggers an emotion in the caregiver. It makes them uncomfortable, therefore the caregiver meets the needs of the child. That's the easiest way to explain it in the infant room, but it doesn't stop there. It actually goes all the way through. I want you to think about a 3-year-old that you have outside on the playground. It's time to come in. You tell everybody, everyone line up, let's go inside. Everyone lines up except for one kid. And then you've got this kid, and he's running around in circles, and he's normally looking at you, pointing and laughing with a big smile on his face. And you're like, Johnny, get in line, Johnny, get in line. And he's just running around. And you think, oh, that kid, he's out to get me. What is wrong with him? He's so defiant. He's evil. He's got the devil inside of him. He's running around here, refusing to get in line, and he's got a big smile on his face while he's doing it. Well, what has happened is that this child has turned his fear into a game. For some reason, he's not ready to go inside, okay? Or he's afraid of going inside. And so he wants you to feel what he's feeling, and he's turned it into that game. Maybe when he goes inside, he knows that it's going to be lunchtime, and he's having some little tummy issues, and every time he eats, he gets a tummy ache. He's afraid that when he goes inside, he's about to have a tummy ache. Maybe it's nap time. Nap time will be coming up soon. and for some reason he's having nightmares, really scary nightmares. And so he knows that as soon as he goes inside, he's going to have to lay down for a nap, and he's going to have one of these nightmares. It could be a number of different things like that, but he's turning that fear into a game. All right. Then we've got, this is typical number 2. Preschoolers create their own reality. You know, children can only understand the world from their point of view. And so as an early educator, it's very important that you view the world from the child's point of view. They create their own version of reality. You know, a good example is a 2-year-old child goes home and tells the mom that the teacher hit him. Okay, now you know the teacher didn't hit the child. You know that didn't happen, but the parent comes in. My kid told me that the teacher hit him. And how many of y'all have heard the parent that says, my child does not lie? Well, no, I'm not saying that your child is a big fat liar, but I am saying the teacher didn't hit the kid. All right? Now, what's happened is that the child is giving you the version of the story from his version of reality. You know, maybe the teacher was lining the children up to go to lunch or to go to the restroom or to go outside, and the teacher patted Johnny on the shoulder and said, all right, let's move the line. And she gave him a simple pat on the shoulder. Well, from the child's version of reality, the teacher hit him. And so when the kid goes home and talks to the parent, you know, tells the parent, my teacher hit me. All right, so again, it's not that the child is lying, but it's their version of reality. And so it's important when communicating with parents and when communicating to children that that's their version. All right, it may not be the way you interpreted the situation, but it's their version of the situation. This is typical number 3, is very, very strong. All right, young children have immature inner speech. Let me explain to you for a moment what inner speech is. Inner speech is that voice that we have inside of our head. That voice that's constantly talking to you, constantly mentoring you, coaching you, preparing you for the next step in your interactions or in your thoughts. Your inner voice is constantly talking. Young children do not have that inner voice. The only thing they have are images. They have pictures, but they don't have the sound. It's like watching a movie with no sound. That is what it's like for the child. All right. Now, typically, children do not mature with their inner speech until the average age of 7. However, these days, with the overexposure to screen time and the lack of social and emotional development, we're starting to see children that do not have a mature inner speech until as late as 9. All right. This is a good example of this is, you know, you're driving in your car and you have your toddler in the back seat in their car seat. And as you're driving around, you hear that toddler making all kinds of sounds, you know, and what they're doing is they've got images in their head, but they're creating their own soundtrack. All right. Sometimes you'll even kind of hear them singing a little song or something. They're creating. All right. So, you know, a mistake that we sometimes make in the classroom is that, you know, when a child misbehaves or when a child, you know, doesn't meet our expectations, you go sit down in the corner and you just think about what you did. And then the child goes and they sit down, and within 10 seconds, they're fidgeting, they're playing with something, you know, they're getting up and looking around. I told you to sit down and think about what you said. Well, they can't. They can't sit down and think about what they did because they don't have that inner voice to do it. They only have the images. So that's why, again, that sensory stimulation is so important in these type of situations. A really good way to measure where a child is at with their inner speech, take some objects, some blocks, and place it on a table. Take 4 or 5 blocks, different colors, different shapes, put it on a table, and ask the child to count. How many blocks do you see on the table? Well, the child's going to take their little finger and they're going to point down and they're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Teacher, I see 4 blocks on the table. And you're like, yes, you are correct. There are 4 blocks on the table. But then mix them up. Maybe take some out, put some new ones in, some different shapes, some different colors. And then I want you to tell the child, put your arms behind your back and hold your arms behind your back. And now I want you to count how many blocks do you see on the table. And you'll see them. They'll be like a little bird, and they'll use their nose, and their head will bob down to the table, and they'll count 1, 2, 3. There's 3 blocks on the table. And you're like, yes, you're right. There's 3 blocks. And then again, take some out, put some new ones on there, mix them up. And then I want you to tell the child, I want you to count how many blocks are on the table. You have to keep your hands behind your back. You cannot move your head, and you can't talk. So they have to count inside of their head. The kid's going to look down at the blocks, and they're going to look back up to you, and they're going to say, I can't do it. Because they don't have the inner speech to count within their head. That's a great way to kind of measure where a child is at with their inner speech. It's a really cool activity. I suggest that you do it. All right, this is typical number 4. Don't is a meaningless word. How many times have you told a child, don't touch that red cup? And what do they instantly do? They touch the red cup. And then they look at you all proud with a big smile on their face, like, look what I did. And you're like, why are you acting so proud? I told you not to touch the red cup. But to the child, they're all happy because they did exactly what you told them to do. They don't understand the word don't. It's meaningless. So this is where you must tell children what they can do rather than what they can't do. All right? You may touch the orange spoon. All right? Tell them what they can do rather than what they can't do. Now, when we're communicating with a child, always keep in mind 55% of communication is nonverbal. 38% is tone of voice. Only 7% of communication is the words that come out of your mouth. 55% of your communication is body language alone. Think about times when you've talked to a dog, and how many of y'all are dog owners out there? And when we talk to a dog and they get all excited and they wag their little tail and they jump up and down, does the dog really understand the words that we're saying? No, not likely. But what gets the dog excited and what gives the dog commands is your tone of voice and your body language. And we always talk to our dogs with our body and our tones. That's what they feed off of. So, a lot of times when I'm working with the 10 principles of guidance and the 10 principles of discipline, people always ask me, what about the nonverbal children? Your toddlers that are nonverbal, your 3 and 4-year-olds that have a developmental delay and they're nonverbal. We're going to go ahead and squash this one right here, because even with your nonverbal children, look, 93% of communication is nonverbal. All right, it's body language and tone. So keep that in mind with your kids. And then this is typical number 5. Children can only see the world through their eyes. And it's so important that you, as an early educator, that you put yourself in their position, that you see what they see, you understand what they understand. Don't make assumptions on what you think the child is capable of. You've got to see the world through their eyes, all right? So many times we make the mistake of expecting the child to just understand because we understand. All right? We can't see it that way. We've got to see it through their version of reality. I love this quote right here. Don't worry that your kids won't listen. Worry that they're watching you. All right, that's so powerful right there. And that leads us right into positive discipline principle number 3. Adults are accountable as role models. And like I mentioned earlier, what you value, they will value. All right. Children spend more time with us than they do their own families in a lot of situations. We become such a huge influence to them. Our actions, our behavior, our sense of control, they're watching every single move. And what we've got to understand is a lot of the behaviors that we get very frustrated with our children, guess who they learned it from? They learned it from us. All right. Principle number 4, adults must maintain control. I think back to a time um, where, and this has been many, many years ago, I had a little 4-year-old girl in one of my classrooms that was not making good decisions and had a lot of aggression, and she was hitting other children and hitting the teacher. And the teacher calls me back to the classroom, and she says, Mr. Tim, I need help with this child. Well, I knelt down, got to the child's eye level, looked her in the eyes, and I said, now, it hurts when you hit your friends. And the little girl looked right at me, made a fist, reared back, and just punched me right in the face. And this little girl, for a little bitty tiny 4-year-old, she had a punch. And my first reaction is I wanted to reach out and grab her little neck and strangle her, but I wasn't quite ready to go to prison, so I had to maintain self-control. And so I stood up, I kept my eyes on the little girl, and I had to gain, my own self-control, count to 10, breathe. I had to get myself in control. But the amazing thing about this experience is that when this little girl punched me in the face, she was ready to go. She was ready to fight. I mean, she was ready to take me down. And then you got to sit there and you got to think, what has gone on in this little girl's life that she has so much anger and so much aggression that she is not in a fight or flight mode. She's in a fight mode, and she was just ready to go. But I noticed that the more I maintained control and the more active calming I did for myself, I'm breathing, I kept my eyes right on her, I was getting myself in control. I could see this little girl, put her fists down. She started breathing and she got herself in control. And then I kind of realized that, no one had ever role modeled to this child how to respond to a situation. There's a big difference between reacting and responding to a situation. She was in a constant fight mode. I want y'all to kind of understand that the lower back part of the brain is our CD-ROM. All right. And every experience that we have going through life, from the time we're born to this exact moment right now, all of these experiences are stored in the lower back part of our brain, and they sit there. Most of these experiences you don't even realize are still back there, but I guarantee you they're back there. All right. And then, most of our thinking happens in what's called our executive state, which is the upper front part of the brain. When we get emotional, when we get angry, all right, when we get stressed, our brain downshifts into it downshifts into what's called the limbic system, which is what I like to call we lose common sense. All right. How many of y'all have gotten really upset? You gotten into a fight and you said something you didn't mean, and then you're apologizing for it later. You downshift and you lose common sense. All right. You downshift into that fight or flight mode. All right. Well, you also, when you get angry and stressed and upset, you downshift into your experiences. All right. And your behavior is based on those past experiences. I'll give you an example. Growing up as a child, I'm sure that many of y'all had experiences where your mom or your dad or your grandparents or whoever raised you said or did things, and you probably said, when I grow up, I'm never going to say or do this item that my mom used to do to me. You probably said that multiple times. And then now that you're an adult and you have children of your own, they get you angry and you're like, if you don't stop it, I'm going to pull this car over and I'm going to make you walk the rest of the way home. And then as soon as you say that, you're like, oh my gosh, what did I just say? I swore I would never say that. Because see, what happens is that you were in your executive state, your children made you angry, you downshifted into your fight or flight, and when you downshifted into your experiences, and bam, out comes your mother, flying out of your mouth. And you're like, where did she come from? It's because you downshift into those experiences. Let me show you exactly how it works. This is fascinating right here, everyone. Fascinating. So when we get emotionally hijacked, and when we have a high range of emotions, so you get angry, you get upset, you get stressed. All right, how you behave is first going to start with your experiences. What have you experienced in your lifetime? Your experiences create your beliefs. What is important to me? What do I value? Where am I going to take this? Your beliefs then turn into your thoughts. All right? I'm thinking about fighting. I'm thinking about flying. All right? Your thoughts turn into feelings. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm lonely. I'm anxious. And then those feelings turn into choices. How am I going to react to this situation? Your choices turn into behaviors. It's so incredibly important for us to understand this cycle and how it works, so that as an early educator, you know your children, okay? You know what their beliefs are. You know what is important to them. You know that their beliefs turn into their thoughts. And because you anticipate behavior, you know which thought is going to turn into what feeling. And whenever a child is in a high range of emotions, those feelings and those high range of emotions turn into choices. You have the ability to prevent the behavior. You have the ability to distract the behavior by jumping into the situation in the middle of this cycle, all right, and manipulate, preventing the negative behavior from happening. Now, I've done this training many, many times, and I have many, many people that tell me, well, I have a lot of kids in my classroom that go straight from incident to the behavior, and they don't go through this cycle. I guarantee you, yes, they do. They do travel through this cycle. Some of them just go at lightning speed, okay? But that's where it's important for you to understand triggers. And there are going to be triggers in all of us, adults and children, that when you hit a trigger, it will speed this process at lightning speed and go straight to behavior. All right? Understanding those triggers and helping children recognize those triggers are going to help you in a tremendous way. I do think it's important, though, that before you can help a child with a trigger, you need to understand your own triggers, and we all have them. Okay? Keep that in mind. Anger is simply fear in disguise. Think about a time that you were driving down the road and a car cut you off. All right. You got angry. You started yelling at the car. You may have held up a hand and told them that they were number one, but you didn't use the right finger. And you're yelling and screaming with road rage. Now, were you angry at that car for cutting you off, or were you afraid? For a brief moment, you were afraid. You were afraid that you almost had a car wreck. If you were to have a car wreck, you would be severely injured. If I was severely injured, who would take care of my family? And worst case scenario, I died. What would happen to those around me? All right. And that fear came out as anger. All right. So keep that in mind right there. This is what I talked about earlier. Anger, when we do get angry, adrenaline kicks in. Our brain will downshift into what's called the limbic system, and you go into that fight or flight response. Or what I called it, you lose your common sense, that unconscious response. It's just like, I'll go ahead and go to this one. Let me go backwards. It's just like losing your car keys. You look for your car keys, you can't find them, you get yourself all worked up, you start freaking out. I'm never driving again. I'm buying a bicycle. And as soon as you calm yourself, what do you find? You find the car keys. All right, because all of that anger and that frustration has downshifted you, and you're in that unconscious response. Same thing with, same thing with adrenaline. You go into that fight or flight. You either become aggressive or you withdraw. I remember a time I was in a hotel room and someone was trying to get into my room. When I get up, a grown man, I'm standing in the middle of my hotel room staring at the door thinking, what do they want? What are they going to do? Why me? And then I start going through this whole process. Well, finally I realized it was just some drunk person that was trying to get into the wrong room. And then when I get home and I start telling my friends about the situation, they're like, well, why didn't you just go over and call security? Oh, well, I guess I could have done that. But because that adrenaline had taken over my body, you lose that common sense right there. You go into that withdrawal state. All right. And that is the trap that we fall into, is that sometimes we do model the very behavior that we're trying to eliminate. All right. Look at this right here. When your brain does downshift into the limbic system, all right, it's very important for you to tell yourself, I am safe, okay? Reduce the adrenaline that's flowing through your body. I am calm. And then unhook yourself emotionally from this situation. I can help this child with their problem. Unhook yourself emotionally. This is not about you. Take your emotions out of the equation. So incredibly important. I love this right here that Dr. Becky Bailey came up with. Be a star. Stop, take a breath, and relax. Smile, take a breath, and relax. I think sometimes that looks a little creepy. That's why I start off with stop, take a breath, and relax. And teach your children to. I love it. I've got one classroom that we've been practicing conscious discipline for many, many years. And I can walk into this classroom and the kids, well, I can see them in a learning center and they'll even say, I'm going to be a star. Okay, stop, take a breath, relax. It's great. The kids really get into this too. They love it. That old eye for an eye leaves everyone blind. So true right there. Love that quote from Dr. Martin Luther King. That goes into positive principle number 5. Adults must see the world from the child's point of view. We've got to understand the child. All right? I want y'all to keep in mind that not only children, but adults too, we are always in 2 different states of being. We're either calling for love or we're extending love. All right? Think about it. You had a really rough day at work. You were late for work. You got stuck behind the train, when you got to work, your director made you sign the tardy log. You hate that stupid tardy log. And then you get into the classroom and you find out that your co-teacher called in sick. She's always out sick. When are they going to do something about her? They put the sub in there that you can't stand. She's lazy. She doesn't do anything. You got bit today. Someone threw up on you. You asked for next Friday off. Your director told you no. It's picture day. No one can take off work on picture day. And you're like, why? That's so stupid. How many pictures do we have to take around here? Every time I turn around, there's a photographer in this school. It's messing up my days off, and you just had a crazy, crazy bad day. And then you decide, I'm going to stop on my way home and get McDonald's for dinner because I'm not cooking tonight. And then you get your McDonald's and you get home and you realize they forgot your French fries. And, it's just craziness. So then you go to your significant other and you sit down on the couch and you're like, oh, I just had the worst day. I was late for work. I got stuck behind the train. My co-teacher called in sick. I got the lazy sub. My director's unfair. She won't let me have next Friday off. And McDonald's forgot my French fries. And you just unload on that significant other. And then how many of y'all have been in this situation and your significant other looks over at you and says, you know what, you're right. That job you have just stinks. You should quit your job. You should find another job. That director is horrible. Your kids are horrible. Your coworkers are pathetic. And how many times have I told you, stop going to McDonald's, go to Burger King? And then you look at your significant other and you're like, you're crazy. You're stupid. Who asked you for your opinion? I love my job. My kids are the best. My coworkers are awesome. It's the best director I've ever had in my career. And give up those golden, tasty French fries from McDonald's? You're out of this world. We've all been in that situation. Now, right then, when that person got home and they went to their significant other, were they calling for love or were they extending love? They were calling for love. I just need you to listen to me and shut up. All right, don't say a word. There was no extending love right there. All right, but it's kind of the same thing in the classroom. Our children do this too. It's a calling for love or it's an extending love. So let's look at it from a classroom point of view. What does the child want? Do they want information or do they want understanding? Are they calling for love or are they extending love? All right. When they're extending love, they're wanting information. All right. They're calm, they're direct, they're rational, they're in control, they're curious, they're interested. When I'm calling for love, I'm wanting you to understand me. All right. I want you to understand what I'm going through. So here it's going to be emotional. It's going to be whining. It's irrational. It's out of control. It's withdrawn. It's overwhelmed. It's all of these emotions that are built up inside of my body are going to come pouring out. And I need you to understand me. All right. That's what the child wants right there. Principle number 6 is that adults must speak clearly and assertively. We have got to teach our children that their words are more powerful than hands that hit, feet that kick, and mouths that bite. Love this one right here. Have a little conversation about that goal. To teach children that their words are more powerful than hands that hit, feet that kick, and mouths that bite. There's 3 different types of interactions, all right, or 3 different types of individuals. You can also describe it this way. You've got the passive individual or the passive interaction that fails to communicate their own rights. And then you've got the aggressive interaction or the aggressive person that stands up for their own rights, but they violate the rights of others. And then we've got our assertive individuals or our assertive interactions that stands up for their rights, but they also respect the rights of others. Now, we want to get everyone to that assertive state, all right? That's the respectful state to be in. Let's take a look at classroom teachers for a moment. Sometimes when we are interacting with our children, we tend to use ineffective speech. All right. And we expect our children to understand our direction, but yet we're using an ineffective speech. Let me give you some examples right here. All right. Okay, kids, at the end of class today, we're going to pick up all of our trash and we're going to put all of our trash in the trash can. That would make me so happy. Don't you want Mr. Tim to be happy? That's people pleasing. That's ineffective because guess what? Some of your kids probably don't want you to be happy. They could care less if you're happy. So they're not going to fall for the people pleasing approach. Then we go, hey, listen, everybody, hey, focus. I need everyone to pick up their trash and do it. Put it in the trash can or there will be no outside time. All right, that's demanding. All right, again, very ineffective. People are turned off by this. People are offended by this type of speech. Well, class, I don't even know why I'm telling you to pick up the trash. I know you're not. You're just a bunch of slobs. You tear up this classroom every single day. You have no respect for anything. All right, I don't know who raised you, a bunch of apes. All right, that's negative speech. My goodness, I hope you're not talking to your children like this, but we do see it sometimes, you know. And then programming. All right, everyone repeat after me. I state your name, promise to pick up my trash after the training or after class and put it in the trash can. All right, that's programming. I just trained all of y'all. I just turned all of y'all into robots. And then there's including. All right, let's all work together and pick up the trash and put it in the trash can. We're all going to work together. It's going to be fun. We're going to sing songs, Kumbaya, High School Musical songs, and it's going to be great. Well, again, that's not effective either. We need to use assertive speech. After class today, everyone pick up your trash and put it in the trash can. All right, so that was respectful. It was not misleading. My commands were simple, and it was respectful. All right. Use a CPA approach. All right. Shift from defiance to compliance. Clearly communicate what you want. Provide choices to facilitate the process, and acknowledge resistance with empathy. All right, you got two kids playing in the block center. All right, Johnny, you need to pick up the blue and green blocks and put them on the shelf. Sarah, you pick up the red and yellow blocks and put them on the shelf. Now, choices, or you know, we did two different colors. Someone needs to pick up the red and yellow blocks. Someone needs to pick up the red and blue blocks. Johnny, which blocks would you like to pick up? Sarah, what blocks would you like to pick up? All right. Oh, Sarah, I forgot that your sister's favorite color is red, and you don't like to pick up the red blocks, so you pick up the blue and the green blocks. So acknowledge that. Some confusing commands and requests that we see. A command offers no choice, and it requires a specific phrase. Johnny, pick up the red and blue blocks and put them on the shelf. That is a command. After Johnny picks up the blocks, puts them on the shelf, you did it. You picked up the blue and green blocks. Now, a request offers a choice. Okay, Johnny, can you either pick up the red blocks or the green blocks? And with a request, that requires a thank you. When you're giving a command, you don't get a thank you. All right, that's where we say you did it. All right. Relationships are like a savings account. You only get out of them what you put in them. Beautiful quote from Dr. Tim Jordan, and so very true right there. That leads us to principle number 7. Discipline is an opportunity to teach. It is not an opportunity to punish. Huge rule right here when you are dealing with an aggressor. Victim first, aggressor second. Okay, victim first, aggressor second. Let's say, for example, you got two children that are playing, and one reaches over and they bite the other child. Okay, let's talk about empowerment. Now, when you've got a situation where one child bites another child, typically what we do is the teacher will go over and say, you know, Johnny, don't bite Sarah. Biting hurts. All right. Your friends don't like it when you bite them. Well, you know, the teacher was not the one that was bitten. So you don't know what it felt like to get bitten. You don't know if it hurt or if it felt good. And then you say your friends don't like it when you bite them. Well, how do you know, number one, how do you know they don't like it? All right, how do you know that they're friends? All right, the kid could say, well, I could care less. They're not my friend. All right, so it's important, again, victim first, aggressor second, and we want to empower our victims. All right, so you see Johnny and Sarah playing in the classroom. Sarah starts crying. Okay, so you're going to walk over, you're going to do an observation. Sarah, your face is red. You have tears flowing down. You're holding onto your arm. Something happened. And Sarah's going to say, Johnny bit me. All right, so then you're going to go to Sarah. Did you like it? No. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to go tell Johnny, I don't like it when you bite me. All right. Now, make sure that Sarah matches your voice. So Sarah, match your voice to mine. Okay, tell Johnny, I don't like it when you bite me. All right, and watch her, because Sarah will usually say something like, teacher told me to tell you that I don't like it when I bite you or when you bite me. No, 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 no. Match your voice with mine. Johnny, I don't like it when you bite me. And then they might do this. I don't like it when you bite me. Nope, match your voice with mine. You got to be assertive. And then when Sarah finally goes, Johnny, I don't like it when you bite me. And then you're going to look at Johnny and you're going to say, Johnny, I'm here to make sure that you listen. But see, Johnny's not going to listen to me because I'm not the one that was bit. Okay? He is going to listen to the victim. He's going to understand empathy from the victim. Sarah is the one that got bit. She's the one that got hurt. And that empowerment is going to come across in such a meaningful way. It's pretty awesome, all right? Work with your children on empowerment. You're going to see a big difference. Now, same thing with empowering bullies. It's an opportunity for you to teach, all right? You have a situation where you've got two kids playing. Johnny reaches over and grabs the toy away from Sarah and then pushes her down. All right? So you're going to go to Johnny. You wanted the toy. You may not grab it out of someone's hand and push them down. Pushing someone down hurts. You may ask Sarah if you can play with the toy, or you can choose another activity in the classroom. But see, the key here is to acknowledge, what Johnny was wanting. He had an unmet need. His unmet need was that there was a toy that he wanted to play with. Okay? So we're going to acknowledge that. You wanted the toy. All right? He made a poor decision by pushing Sarah down. So we're going to acknowledge that. You may not push Sarah down. Okay? Pushing someone down hurts. And then give them the alternatives. Principle number 8 is going to demand that the adult be in a relationship with a child. Okay, it all comes down to relationships. This is so extremely important. Look at this data right here. 5 minutes of focused play a day will reduce power struggles by 50%. Children need our presence, not our presence. Okay? They simply want quality time with you. And I don't know how many children that you have in your classroom, but I'm willing to bet that you can spend 5 minutes of focused play each day with each child in your classroom. I bet you can make that happen. All right. Good old Dolly Parton said this: if you want a rainbow, you must first put up with the rain. Okay? Mistakes are only opportunities for learning, and children will make mistakes. Now, I want to remind y'all, statistically, adults make more mistakes on a daily basis than children do. Okay? Let's say, for example, you've got 3 children playing in the home center. And as the children are playing, suddenly an oven door pops off. Okay. Now, typically, the teacher would walk over and immediately say, "Who broke the oven door?" And because our brains are instantly wired to be blamers, what are the children going to do? They're instantly going to go, "She did it, he did it." Their fingers are going to be pointing in every different direction. All right. This is where principle number 9 comes in. We are going to seek solutions, not blame. So when you see that the oven door pops off in the home center and you're going to walk over, first, state your observation. I see that the oven door has come off. All right. Let's work together to put it back on and to fix it. Rather than doing the blame game, rather than encouraging the children to do the blame game, let's just focus on the opportunity to teach. Now, sometimes when we're in the classroom, because of our busy schedules or our lack of interest or whatever it may be, sometimes we deny the opportunity to teach. Have a little conversation amongst yourselves for a moment about times that, and you got to be honest, and it's okay to be honest because remember, mistakes are opportunities to learn. How many times in a classroom have you been an ignorer, a solver, or a taker? You see 2 kids, out on the playground, and you got this kid that's always a bully, and he's always beating up on other kids. And then finally one day, someone's had enough. And some innocent little kid just turns around and knocks him right upside the head. And for a brief moment, you ignore the situation. You're like, "Whoa. Oh, wait. No, don't do that." You can't be an ignorer. All right. Now, that was kind of a worst-case scenario right there. But we do this in the classroom sometimes, too. If we ignore the behavior, eventually it'll go away. Or because we're busy, lunch is almost here, we need to go outside, nap time, whatever. Here, let me just solve the problem for you. Rather than giving the children the opportunity to cooperate and solve their own problems, we just do it for them. And then, of course, 2 kids fighting over the fire truck. I'm sick and tired of y'all fighting over this fire truck. I'm just going to take it away and put it in the closet. Well, put this poor fire truck in the closet. You put it in timeout. The fire truck didn't do anything wrong. You just remove the object rather than solving the problem. All right. So again, we're denying those opportunities to teach. All right. Let's say, for example, I've got a little girl that's playing in the science center. And right next to the science center is the block center. And you've got 3 kids playing in the block center. And you've got a rule in your classroom that only 3 people can play in a center at a time. Okay. Well, you've got this little girl who's playing in the block center, or playing in the science center, sorry. And she's bored. Okay. You can only play with those plastic dinosaurs for so long and they get a little boring, all right? Well, I'm bored. I want to go to the block center, but I can't go to the block center because there's already 3 people in the block center. But I'm a pretty smart kid. And let's think about this for a moment. I can casually play with the dinosaurs, kind of scooting one over to the edge of the shelf. Eventually it's going to fall off. I'm going to hit another kid in the head. That kid that's down there is a big old whiner. She's going to start crying. She's going to run to the teacher. As soon as she runs to the teacher holding her head, I'm going to swoop in and take her spot in the block center. All right, well-conceived plan. And so that's exactly what the kid in the Science Center does. They casually play. They scoot the dinosaur over. It falls off the shelf, hits the kid on the head. They start crying. They run. The kid swoops in. Now they take their spot in the block center. So you've got two situations here. And you got to look at how am I going to handle this situation. Well, that kind of leads to this right here. To children, their problems begin with the perception of pain. I've got the kid that was bored in the Science Center, and I've got the kid that was playing in the block center, minding their own business, and they got hit by a falling dinosaur. So, for the child that was in the Science Center, when did their problem start? Their problem started with the perception of pain. Now, pain is not always physical pain. It can also be emotional pain, all right, or mental pain. That child in the Science Center, their pain started when they got bored, all right? That's when their problem started. Now, the kid that was in the block center that was minding their own business, that got hit in the head with a falling dinosaur that came out of nowhere, their problem started when they got hit with a dinosaur. All right. Situation did the problem start for each child? Okay. Be a safe maker. All right. So like in this situation, something happened. All right. The kid in the Science Center knocked a dinosaur off the shelf. It hit another kid in the head. Okay, I'm going to come over and I'm going to assure my help. Facilitate discussion. What happened? Okay, and then explore solutions. Maybe the child in the Science Center could have simply asked, hey, would you like to trade spots with me? Rather than causing the conflict. So be a safe maker. The last principle is going to be principle number 10. Communicate with the intention of love, not the intention of fear. Now, remember earlier we were talking about the inner voice, and that voice that's constantly speaking to you inside your head. Children have an immature inner voice. Now, adults, we have fully matured inner voices, or that inner speech. Look at this, 77% of our inner speech is negative. You know, I'm tired. I'm tired of sitting in this chair. My bottom hurts. I'm getting hungry. I'm ready to go home. All right, I wonder if my kids had a good day. Probably not. You know, constant negative inner speech. Okay, that's why it's easier to be negative than it is to be positive. You've got to really work at being positive. You've got to coach yourself to be positive. So when you're working with your children in the classroom and you're working on everything that we've talked about in this DVD, you have got to constantly motivate yourself to be positive. That you only got 23% of your brain that thinks positive thoughts. All right? Everything else is negative. So it kind of goes down to, you know, it's your choice. Do you want to be a negative person? And a negative person is full of fear, they're full of worthlessness, and they constantly feel like they're not good enough. Or do you want to be a positive individual that is full of love, that they are worthy and they are good enough? It's your choice. And it's also your choice what attitude you take into your classroom. All right, that's the 10 principles of discipline. I hope that y'all enjoyed the material. I encourage you to kind of go back and review this once again, especially jot down those 10 principles. Really evaluate your interactions in the classroom and how you maintain self-control and handle situations in the classroom. Remember, you are the role model. You must empower your children. You must understand your children. And most importantly, when you talk about these 10 principles, understand that this is a process. It takes time, it takes effort, but it is one of the most successful things that you can do in your classroom. And you will see a change in not only your classroom management, but in your personal life too. It works. Thank you all so much today for watching this DVD, and be sure to email me with any questions that you may have. Thank you very much. Y'all have a great day.